Once upon a time, when heaven and earth were not yet clearly defined, in a poor rural area of Vietnam, there was a small village nestled beside a winding river. The village was called Cu Sang, not because the people here were rich or noble, but because for generations, the people here had always believed in the light of goodness, wisdom, and sincerity. The people of Cu Sang lived by farming, fishing, and gathering firewood in the forest. The hard life made everyone's face tanned and their backs bent over the years, but in their eyes there was still a glimmer of hope. Even if it was fragile, at the end of the village, next to a bamboo grove that rustled all year round, there was a small hut that was just enough to shelter them from the rain and sun. In that hut lived a mother and her son, a widow and a son who was not yet 10 years old. People called her Mother Net. No one knew her real name, only that she was gentle, hardworking, and willing to help anyone with anything. The boy, the one whose wonderful story is about to be told, was called Siu Sang. From the moment he was born, Siu Sang was a special child. He was born on a stormy and thunderous night, when the whole village had to light torches all night to find someone to help deliver Mother Net. People said that the birth of this child was a strange omen. Indeed, from a young age, he was unusual. He did not cry loudly like other children, but only looked around with jet-black eyes, sparkling like stars in the sky. When he first learned to walk, Siu Sang liked to sit under the bamboo tree listening to his mother tell fairy tales, liked to play with clay and mold people, and then mumbled and talked as if he were staging a play. Mother Net thought her son was stupid, but as he grew older, Siu Sang revealed more and more things that made the whole village widen their eyes in amazement. He did not study at school because his family was poor and had no money, but he could read the whole paragraph just by glancing at the board someone held in their hands. He often asked his mother strange questions like, "Mom, why is there only one moon that can shine on the whole village? Mom, why do good people suffer while bad people are rich?" These questions made Mother Net speechless. Over time, she could only stroke her son's hair and say, "God gave you a bright mind, so you must use it to help others." From the age of 6, Siu Sang knew how to calculate faster than adults. One time, the village mortar man dropped a bag of silver in the pond. Many people went down to search, but could not find it. The small boy stood watching the flowing water, then said, "You dropped the wooden mortar down. Where it stops floating is where the silver coin is." Everyone laughed, thinking that the child was talking nonsense. But then they tried it, and indeed the silver bag was right under the place where the mortar stopped, because it got caught on a tree root submerged in the water. From then on, the villagers called Siu Sang the thoughtful boy. He did not show off his talent, just smiled, then quietly went back to help his mother plant rice, sweep the yard. That spring, it rained heavily for several weeks. The harvest failed. Cu Sang village was plunged into hunger and thirst. Mother Net became thinner and thinner. Her hair turned white. Her back bent like a straw. Siu Sang was only 8 years old at this time, but he knew how to wade through the forest to find wild vegetables, climb up the cliff to get bird nests to feed his mother. He was not only skillful, but also had a quick mind. One afternoon, while the whole village was resting after the field, a group of imperial soldiers rode into the village on horseback. They wore shiny armor, holding royal decrees. The villagers rushed out, their eyes wide and flat. The oldest soldier, who seemed to be the commander, spoke up. "The king's decree states, whoever in the world can solve the 3 most difficult riddles in the world will be granted an audience with the emperor and will be rewarded handsomely. This decree will be sent throughout the country of Nam, and in every village, the people of that village will have the right to test their strength." He then took out the decree and read it aloud. 1. How can one measure all the water in the East Sea? 2. How can one eat an elephant? 3. How can one know whether a person's heart is honest or dishonest? The whole village was in an uproar. The old shook their heads, the young laughed sarcastically. Someone tried to answer, but was laughed at by the soldiers as stupid. The king's decree was no joke. In the afternoon, when the soldiers withdrew from the village to go elsewhere, the villagers were still talking. But in the crowd, a boy with messy hair and muddy hands stood silently, his eyes shining like fire. That was Siyu Sang. That night, in the small hut, when the moonlight shone through the gaps in the bamboo blinds, Siyu Sang whispered to his mother, "Mom, I think I know how to solve those 3 riddles." Mother Net was startled, thinking that her son was talking in his sleep. But then she saw her son's eyes shining with faith, and she suddenly trembled, not because of fear, but because of a premonition that this child was not an ordinary person. The sun shone on the top of Nua Mountain. The first rays of the day filtered through the gaps between the leaves, playing on the poor thatched roof of the hut at the end of the village. Siyu Sang had been up since the 4th cock crowed. He sat by the bank of the canal, holding a small stick in his hand, scratching the ground, muttering something. When Mother Net woke up, she saw her son molding clay into a scale. One side was a bag of rice, the other side was a leaf. While working, he said, "If people value a bag of rice more than a leaf, but the weight is the same, then is there something more special about a leaf than rice?" Mother Net could only shake her head. "Son, why do you keep thinking about such distant things? Hunger and fullness are the things right in front of you." But the boy just smiled. "I'm just curious, Mom. My mind won't calm down." Life in the village still passed quietly as it had always been. The villagers were used to seeing Siyu Sang everywhere. Sometimes sitting on the edge of the rice field watching ducks swim. Sometimes climbing an old cotton tree to observe birds making their nests. Sometimes seeing him mumbling and counting the cracks on the stone slab in front of the village communal house. At first, people thought he was blind, but gradually, they began to believe that Siyu Sang had a different head point one day. The village scholar, the only person who knew Chinese characters, opened a class to teach children from well-off families. He often sat in front of the door drinking tea and reading books. Seeing Siyu Sang peeking out from behind the bamboo fence, he called out, "Little boy, what are you doing here?" The boy politely replied, "Sir, I want to learn to read, just to know how to write my name." The scholar sneered, "What's the use of knowing how to write your name? Your family doesn't even have enough rice to eat." But then, after only a few days, the scholar began to be startled. Other children had to study for a whole month to remember the letters, but Siyu Sang only needed to look at them once and ask them once to remember them. Not only could he read, but he also understood the deep meaning of each word and each sentence. One day, the scholar tested him with a couplet. "In the sky there are blue clouds. On the ground there is a river flowing." He did not hesitate. "Out in the fields, the storks are white. In the garden, the doves are cooing." The couplet not only rhymed, but also showed sophistication, making the scholar speechless. From that day on, he quietly lent Siyu Sang books and taught him without taking money. Siyu Sang did not just learn letters. He learned from life, from the sound of the wind blowing through bamboo branches, from drops of water falling into jars, from buffalo footprints on muddy fields. Everyone saw that he was different from others, but he never showed that he was better than others. He still helped his mother carry water, dry rice, and plant rice in the fields like any other child. One day, a poisonous snake crawled into the village, bit 2 chickens to death, and then crawled into a bamboo bush near Siyu Sang's house. Everyone was scared. No one dared to come near. The boy walked over, picked up a branch of perilla leaves, lightly hit the bamboo bush, and threw out a big toad. He said, "Toads are God. Snakes will be afraid of toads." Sure enough, a moment later, the snake crawled out, trembling, and was beaten to death by the villagers with sticks. Everyone was shocked. From then on, the villagers believed that Siyu Sang was not only intelligent, but also had a connection with heaven and earth. The rumor about a boy who was better than adults spread beyond Kusang village. There were people from neighboring villages who came just to see his face, ask riddles, and test his skills. Some brought a tricky question. "A chicken with 3 legs. How many legs does 3 chickens have?" The boy immediately replied, "A chicken with 3 legs is a lame chicken. 3 chickens like that have 9 legs, but only 6 can stand." Everyone laughed. Someone asked, "How do you put an elephant in a jar of salt?" He calmly replied, "Cut it into small pieces like people salt buffalo meat." But unfortunately, no one dares to do that with elephants. The answer made people laugh and nod. A week after the day the court soldiers read the king's edict at the village communal house, people saw Siu Sang carrying a brush pen made from bird feathers and a jar of charcoal porridge ink, sitting and copying the 3 riddles the king had given that he wrote and erased, thought and pondered. That night, he asked his mother again, "Mom, if I can solve those 3 riddles, will you let me follow the Mandarin to the palace?" Mother Net was startled. She patted her son's head. Her voice choked. "My child, life is not just about being good at writing. The palace is dangerous. Can you bear it?" The boy looked at his mother, his eyes shining. "I don't want to be an official. I just want the king to know that poor people like me also have intelligence." Mother Net hugged her son. She didn't say anything more. Only tears soaked into her child's hair. The story begins in the capital city of Tanglong, where the Liu dynasty is facing many difficulties. The country is experiencing years of drought, crop failure, robberies, and people are in turmoil. Inside the palace, rumors arise every day, claiming that the national treasury is declining because the king lacks talented people. The king, who is inherently kind but far-sighted, often sighs on the throne every night. "I have gold and jade in my treasury, a large army. But where are the talented people? If there are no talented people to help the country, I am no different from a tree without roots, a boat without a rudder." One day, during the court session, when the civil and military officials were arguing about how to govern the country, an old mandarin with a beard as white as silk stood up and said, "Your Majesty, talented people are not only found in the palace, but also in the deep fields and deep mountains. I request Your Majesty to issue an edict to the whole world, using 3 riddles as a challenge. Whoever can solve them will be a wise person." The king pondered for a moment, then nodded. So a special edict was issued. On the edict, it was written, "I issue 3 riddles. Whoever in the world can solve them will be a wise person, will be brought to the palace to meet the king." The 3 riddles were: how can one measure all the water in the East Sea? How can one eat an elephant? How can one know whether a person's heart is upright or deceitful? The soldiers divided themselves to carry the riddles to all the provinces and prefectures, from the lowlands to the highlands. Under each edict was the royal seal, majestic and imposing. The people came to see it, laughing and talking. Rumors about the 3 riddles spread throughout the village. When the royal edict arrived in Kusang village, the whole village went to the communal house to listen to the soldiers read it. Once again, those riddles resounded in the hot afternoon, arousing the curiosity of the villagers. The elders frowned in thought. The village boys clicked their tongues. It's really a trick of the men in the palace. The riddles are no different from jokes. Some people sneered. Measuring all the water in the East Sea, using a coconut shell would take ages. Some people seriously wrote down the answers and sent them, but only received a silent reply. Siu Sang was different. The boy still read the 3 riddles carefully every day, pondered, and wrote down his solution in simple Nam script. About measuring the water of the East Sea, he wrote, "Your Majesty, if you want to measure all the water of the East Sea, please give me a bottomless jar. No matter how much you scoop, it will never be full." About eating an elephant, he wrote, "No matter how big an elephant is, it can be eaten if you cut it into small pieces, dry it, and eat it piece by piece every day." About people's hearts, he wrote briefly, "Please let someone tell a lie, then look into that person's eyes. If the eyes don't dare to look straight, the heart is not honest." The soldiers returned to the village, a surprise one early morning. When the mist still covered the distant mountains, a group of soldiers rode back to Kusang village. On the saddle, the supervising officer accompanying the group looked at the old, rough handwritten paper and asked loudly, "Who is the person named Siu Sang?" The whole village was bewildered. Siu Sang, who was holding a hoe, suddenly startled and stepped forward. "Sir, I am Siu Sang." The mandarin looked at him from head to toe. His shirt was patched, his hands were muddy, but his eyes were as bright as jade. He smiled, truly a precious gem in the mud. He opened the handwritten paper and announced, "Your solution has been read by the scribe." The king commented, "The writer is intelligent and has vision." so he should be sent to the capital. So today, on behalf of the court, I welcome you to the palace." The whole village burst into tears. Annette's mother burst into tears, her hands tightly holding her son's shirt. "You are going far away. Who will take care of me?" Siyu Sang hugged his mother and whispered, "I am going for you. If I succeed, no one will go hungry, and I will no longer have to worry about every meal." Everyone saw Siyu Sang off. He brought nothing but a small cloth bag containing some roasted rice, an indigo shirt, and an upright heart. The journey to the capital, the group of people and horses crossed rice fields, rivers, and remote passes. Siyu Sang had never been far, but he was not afraid. He observed everything: the sound of birds, the way people traded at the market, the sound of carts rolling through the mud. At night, when the officers and soldiers sat drinking, he quietly recorded what he saw on a scroll. He wrote, "A person's intelligence is not enough. One must know how to love the people, know how to listen to their complaints in order to accomplish great things." Tang Long's Citadel Gate. After nearly 10 days of travel, the group arrived at Tang Long, where the citadel towered, the tiled roofs curved like flying dragons. The Talich River quietly flowed through the citadel, and the main gate towered like the open sky. That Siyu Sang looked up, his heart trembling. Not because of fear, but because he felt something very great was waiting ahead. He did not know that it was that look, a clear look, without any desire for fame or fortune, that would later move the king's heart. The sky of Tang Long that day was as clear as a wash, white clouds drifting slowly over the golden palace roof. In front of the dragon yard, where the moss-covered citadel wall connected with the rising sun, a crowd gathered larger than usual. The guards at the gate today seemed more solemn, because they were waiting for a strange character, a country boy, but had solved 3 riddles that had made the entire court ponder for a whole month. Entering the palace, Siyu Sang was led into the front yard, where civil and military officials gathered before going to see the king. The tall ironwood pillars, each gilded red and gold-plated horizontal lacquered board, lit up the large room. But what caught Siyu Sang's attention was not the luxury, but the eyes of the people around. Some looked at him curiously, some sneered, thinking that he was just a lucky child. A young official, his face red with anger, whispered, "What a mess. A ragged boy is brought here." But Siyu Sang did not flinch. He just bowed politely, then sat quietly in the corner of the room like a small grass in the middle of a large flower garden. The official test began when the drums sounded. All the officials fell silent, facing the main hall door. A majestic chant resounded. "The emperor has descended." The king stepped out. He wore a dark blue dragon robe. His eyes were majestic, but not lacking in kindness. Behind him were the high-ranking officials, the queen, and the prince. When Siyu Sang knelt down to pay his respects, the king looked at him for a long time, then asked, "I heard that you are a farmer's son, never attended formal school. So who taught you the profound principles to solve those 3 riddles?" Siyu Sang raised his head, his voice clear. "Your Majesty, I learned from my mother, from the villagers, from the fields, from the sound of flowing water, from the sound of blowing wind. Wisdom sometimes does not come from books, but from the heart that wants to understand the right thing." Those words made the whole palace stir. Some officials nodded slightly, some frowned. The king smiled. "So today, I want you to personally solve those 3 riddles in front of all the civil and military officials. If you can do it, you will be kept in the palace to study. If not, you will be punished for lying to the king and deceiving the court. The first riddle: how can we measure all the water in the East Sea?" A grand scholar stood up, his voice cold. "Hey boy, please answer. How can we measure all the water in the East Sea?" Siyu Sang said softly, "Your Honor, the East Sea is vast. Everyone thinks it cannot be measured. But I would like to tell you, if there is a bottomless jar, no matter how much water is put in, it will all flow away. That is the way to measure all the water." The entire court was stunned. Some people laughed, some thought. The king nodded. "Good. Use paradox to resolve adversity." The second riddle: how to eat an elephant? Another official asked. "Then I challenge you. How to eat an elephant?" Siyu Sang answered without hesitation. "Your Honor, No matter how big an elephant is, it can be eaten if it is cut into small pieces, dried, stored carefully, and eaten gradually, one piece per day. Nothing is too big if we divide it into small pieces. At this time, several old officials stood up, nodding in agreement. One person whispered, "This way of thinking is truly that of an analytical person." The final riddle: how do you know if a person is honest or dishonest? The judge, known for his strictness, said coldly, "You are very good. So tell me, how do you know if a person is honest or dishonest?" Siyu Sang looked straight into his eyes and replied, "Your Honor, the human heart is the hardest thing to predict. But if you want to know who is honest, let that person tell a lie, then look into their eyes. An honest person usually blushes. His eyes do not hide anything. A dishonest person blinks his eyes, not daring to look at him for long." The room was completely silent. Then a round of applause from the king rang out. "Very good. Not only did you answer correctly, but you also taught people how to judge fairly." A child changed the whole court's outlook from then on. The whole court began to look at Siyu Sang with different eyes. No one dared to laugh sarcastically anymore. Even the young official who had despised him was speechless. The king stepped down and took the boy by the shoulder. "I have never seen anyone so young with such great intelligence. From now on, you will stay in the palace, study with my children, and be taught by the best teachers." The boy bowed his head. "Your Majesty, I only ask for one thing. Let me write a letter to the village every month to tell my mother." The king nodded. "You are filial and intelligent. You are truly a great blessing to the country." From a rustic child, that afternoon, when the sunset dyed the entire Tang Long citadel wall red, the boy Siyu Sang stood in front of the palace porch, holding the first pen he had ever been given. The pen was carved with a small dragon, made of fragrant agarwood. He did not cry, nor did he laugh. He just held it tightly in his hand and thought to himself, "I will study. Study for my mother. Study for the villagers. Study so that no one has to fear the ignorant and powerful." After the three-question challenge, the entire Tang Long citadel was in an uproar. From the Dongxian market to the tea houses and wine shops, people were whispering about the poor country boy who was as smart as a god. Many people expressed admiration, but some whispered, "What can a child do in the officialdom?" In the inner palace, where the thick stone walls did not let the sunlight in, the discussions took a different turn. "Does your Majesty really intend to keep him? He is only 10 years old. He does not know manners. If he is allowed to study with the prince, it will not be good. I see his eyes are too sharp. If a child is like that, it will be difficult to control him in the future." Words rose in waves, but the king did not waver. He saw a rare light in that boy, an intelligence that was not subdued by rigid rules, a child who was not afraid of authority, nor greedy for fame. And so, he decided, test him himself one more time, got a private audience. No one knew that day, when the sunlight had not yet reached the roof of the Eastern Palace, a eunuch came to the Royal Academy and called Siyu Sang's name. He was copying books, stood up respectfully, and followed that person. No drums, no flags, no escorts, just a stone door opening behind the main hall, leading to a private garden, where the king often sat and pondered state affairs. Siyu Sang was invited in. The king was not wearing a royal robe, just a simple silk shirt, sitting at a stone table under an ancient tree. "You're here." The king smiled, his eyes kind. "Yes, your Majesty." The boy bowed his head, neither afraid nor proud at a test of intelligence. But not in words. The king did not ask him any riddles. Instead, he presented three objects: a rusty sword, a gold coin, and a grain of rice. "If you were the ruler of the country," the king asked, "which would you choose as the foundation of the country?" The boy looked at the three objects, not answering in a hurry. After a while, he gently placed the grain of rice in his palm and said, "A sword can protect a generation. Gold can last a generation. But a grain of rice feeds an eternity." The king burst into laughter. It was not a sarcastic laugh, but the laugh of someone who had just untied the knot in his heart. "Good. You did not choose power. You did not choose wealth. You chose the most basic thing. You truly understand the roots." The second test, truth in the human heart. The king called an old soldier in and gave him a fake letter. The letter read, "If you want to live a prosperous life, say that the child lied during the trial. Then you will be rewarded." He turned to Siyu saying, "I want to see how you handle this matter." The old soldier read the letter with trembling hands, then raised his head. "Your Majesty, in fact, that child secretly asked someone else. I know because I heard him whispering at the gate." Siyu Sang did not react. He just stepped forward, looked into the soldier's eyes. "Uncle, can you look me in the eyes and say that again, without blinking, without looking away?" The soldier trembled. After a few seconds, he lowered his head, then knelt down. "Please forgive me, Your Majesty. I only followed the words in the letter." The king clapped his hands. "Once again, you use your eyes to see people's hearts. No need for punishment, no need for power." The final challenge, power and the price this time. The king looked at him for a long time and asked, "If one day I forced you to lie to keep the people at peace, would you do it?" The question made the whole garden silent. Siyu Sang bowed his head and said, "Your Majesty, if that lie helps the people live, the children eat, the elderly are cured, then I will do it. But after that, I will find a way to tell the truth." Why? Because if the ruler does not live truthfully with the people, even if there is peace today, there will be chaos tomorrow. The king was silent. He nodded, very slowly. "You understand the most difficult thing for a leader. I am relieved." A heart is highly rewarded. That afternoon, the king issued an edict. From now on, the boy Siyu Sang, from Kusang, will be admitted to the Imperial Academy. He will be treated like a prince, but will remain a commoner. This person does not enter the palace to enjoy benefits, but to learn how to be an adult. The whole court was shaken. Some were jealous, some admired. But the king only said one sentence: "I need someone with intelligence, but more importantly, someone who knows how to keep the truth in his heart even when forced to lie." After the king's decree, Siyu Sang became the first person in history to enter the Imperial Academy as a commoner, but still equal to a prince and a noble. That made many people in the court feel offended that I, in their hearts, a poor child, never of royal lineage, never attended a formal ceremony or haircut, was studying with the children of high-ranking officials. That was an insult to tradition. Life at the Imperial Academy. The Imperial Academy was located to the east of the inner palace, where high mounds and ancient tree canopies covered the entrance. This was where the quintessence of Vietnam was nurtured. Princes, noblemen, children of famous generals, all studied Confucianism, military strategy, and national etiquette. On the first day Siyu Sang entered the classroom, he wore a simple blue AO dye, without any patterns, and only carried a bamboo pen made by his mother as a gift. The whole classroom was dead silent. No one said hello. Only the third prince, Prince Min, the king's son but with a generous personality, stepped forward to shake his hand. "I am Min. As for you, you can call me brother." The friendship between the two began from that moment. Simple, unadorned, not because of status. The game began with an essay. One day, the teacher gave the topic. Write an essay on the topic. How to keep the people safe without fighting the enemy. The whole class frowned. This was a very difficult topic because it included the whole idea of governing the country in a short essay. Siyu Sang wrote it all at once. In the essay, he gave the following arguments. If you don't want enemies, let the people be full. If you don't want the people to rebel, let them be educated. The Mandarin must be close to the people like the fields are close to the water, like the trees are close to the sun. Without that, don't talk about peace. The essay spread throughout the academy. But then, that essay itself became the spark, the first plot. Plagiarism. A week later, an official whose son also studied in the academy, named Trin Tu Dong, submitted a petition to the court, accusing Siyu Sang of plagiarizing the work of the previous generation of scholars. How could that country boy know how to write such profound arguments? There is clearly someone behind it. Or he copied the teachings of the court officials and claimed it as his own. The whole court was in an uproar. The head of the court had to open a questioning session. During the confrontation, Trin Tu Dong, the official's son, pointed at Siyu Sang and sneered. "You can write that article? I will read it again. Try to respond to each sentence. Siyu Sang stood up, speaking softly. You read one sentence. I will explain one sentence. If I hesitate once, consider me a traitor. Trin read the first sentence. If you want no enemies, let the people be full. Siyu Sang said, a full person will not follow the enemy, because the enemy cannot feed an empty stomach. Hunger is the delicious prey of chaos. Sentence 2. The official must be close to the people like the fields are close to water, Siyu Sang continued. Because if the fields are far from water, the rice will die. If the official is far from the people, the land will be in chaos. He not only explained, but also cited books, words from the ancients, and even examples from his village. The head of the court nodded, closing the sentence. No plagiarism. That article is the heart and soul of someone who has lived with the people. It cannot be copied. Another plot, more clever, more dangerous after failing the first time, Trin Tu Dung and his son played a second trick. This time, it was not slander, but a trap. They held a small party in the academy garden, inviting students to attend. In it, they secretly put a forbidden book, recording political stories kept secret by the court, into Siyu Sang's room. The next day, the imperial soldiers suddenly came to inspect and discovered the book under his blanket. This time, the incident was more serious. Siyu Sang was temporarily detained in the forbidden library, awaiting trial. Turning the tables that night, Prince Min secretly visited his friend. Siyu Sang was not disturbed. He only asked one thing. When will people stop being afraid of truly intelligent people? The prince could not answer. But the next day, he secretly asked the head of the institute to check the handwritten copy of the book, and they discovered that it was not Siyu Sang's handwriting. He also provided evidence. A piece of paper marked in the book with a small line in red ink. Tu Dung, remember to put it in the right place. Don't let it be discovered. It was that handwriting that exposed the plot. After the storm, the case was closed. The king heard the story and did not get angry. He only said, it is normal for a good person to be envied, but to overcome it without resentment is a person worthy of respect. As for Siyu Sang, when asked if he wanted to punish those who harmed him, he only shook his head. I do not need anyone to be beaten. Whoever sows hatred will reap hatred. As for me, I just want to continue studying. Time passed like the water of the Nihar River flowing down the river. Since entering the palace, Siyu Sang had learned many things, not only books, military books, but also manners, how to listen, and how to look at people. He had gotten used to the prying eyes, the furtive sarcasm, and even the silent respect. But what he did not know was that his father, the one who always showed trust, was still silently observing his every move that a king's worry in the night. When the dim moonlight shone through the jade window, King Lu and the queen sat beside a cup of tea, silently. Your Majesty still does not really trust that boy, the queen asked softly. I believe in his intelligence, but people's hearts are deeper than the bottom of a lake. I want to know, is he smart because he is kind, or is he kind because he is smart? The queen sighed. What does your Majesty intend to do? A small trick, but it will give me a big answer. The riddle begins one early spring day. When the sun had just risen, the king invited all the students of the Imperial Academy, including the prince and Siyu Sang, to attend a spring game. Everyone thought this was a fun game, but in fact, this was a trap, a riddle that no one recognized. The king announced, today, whoever among you can solve this riddle will be given a precious gift, the jade sword of our ancestors. Everyone clapped their hands. The king brought out a precious wooden box. On the box, there was a golden lock and a small card that read, the key to this box is inside the box. Whoever can open it will own it. Everyone was stunned. Prince Min frowned. The other princes sneered. A student said, if the key is inside the box, how can it be opened? Another said, is this the tricky riddle? Finally, all eyes were on Siyu Sang. Siyu Sang solve or not? The boy held the box, looking at it for a long time. His hand touched the wood grain. His eyes stopped at the engraving next to it. The key is in the box. He did not try to open it. He did not shake it. He did not break the lock. He just put the box on the table, then looked up and said, "Your Majesty, this game is not to be solved, but to be understood." "Understand what?" the king asked. "Understand that there are things, if we try to use our intelligence to win, it will reveal our greed. Because the gift is not to be taken, but to see who is worthy. If I tried to open it, I would have fallen into the trap of greed." The whole yard fell silent. The king stood up, clapping his hands. "Good, very good. I did not choose to open it, because I understand not everything that can be opened should be opened. That is great intelligence." But the challenge did not stop there. After everyone left, the king secretly ordered the eunuch to bring Siu Sang a small bag of gold, without explanation, without the sender's name. That was the second challenge, to see if Siu Sang would keep it, return it, or remain silent. That night, Siu Sang brought the bag of gold to knock on the door of the imperial study. "Your Majesty, someone left this gold in my room. I don't know who it is, so I'm returning it. What if it's a reward?" The king tested his heart. Rewards never come until you understand what you've done to deserve it. The king nodded. "So what do you want to keep?" "I want to keep my heart from being burdened by gold." The last time, a verbal test, the king invited Siu Sang to sit down and drink tea. "If one day your relatives commit a crime, would you dare to denounce them?" Siu Sang was silent for a long time. "If it is a murder, I will report it. If it is a minor crime, I will advise you to correct your mistakes. But I will never remain silent, because silence is complicity." The king put down his teacup and smiled. "I am not a god, but I have the heart of a saint." Ending a series of trials, the next morning, the king summoned his courtiers and issued an edict. The boy Siu Sang, from now on is appointed as Q2 Khan, is allowed to study in the inner palace and participate in small discussions about governing the country. Not because you are a genius, but because you know when to use your mind, when to keep your mind. Everyone was surprised. A child, not an official, was invited to discuss national affairs. That was unprecedented in history. But the king only said, "A child who dares to say no to gold, dares not to open the box to get the sword, and dares to tell the truth even if it hurts, deserves to sit closer to the throne than anyone else." Summer has come to Tanglong. The red phoenix flowers flow like blood through the ancient tiled roofs, and a gentle breeze blows through the bamboo rows in the Imperial Academy, where Siu Sang and Prince Min sit reading books by the lotus pond. For a long time, the two have become close friends, not only because they are in the same class, but because they find in each other something that others do not have that Siu Sang. The wisdom of a person who once lived at the bottom of society, deeply understanding the pain of the common people. Prince Min, a natural-born benevolent heart, but wrapped in the strict rules of the royal court. The first dialogue about the throne. One day, after a lesson on the history of the Lai dynasty, the teacher said, "A king does not need to love the people. He only needs to know how to govern them." When class was over, Prince Min turned to Siu Sang and asked, "According to you, is what the teacher said right?" Siu Sang did not answer right away. He picked up a fallen leaf, dropped it into the lotus pond, and said, "If you become a king but do not love your people, you are like this leaf, floating wherever the water takes you. It has no roots." The prince was silent. It was the first time he heard someone dare to contradict his teacher. "So, does being a king require intelligence like yours?" Siu Sang laughed. "No need to be as intelligent as you, but you must know how to listen to intelligent people and be humble enough to learn what you do not know." A lesson from a horse riding session. One morning, the group of students were allowed to go outside the city to practice horse riding. Siu Sang was a poor rider, while Prince Min rode like the wind. During the race, a student accidentally whipped Siu Sang's horse too hard, causing it to panic, rear up, and throw him onto the grass. Everyone laughed. Only the prince got off his horse, ran to help his friend up, brushed the dirt off his shirt, and shouted. As a man, no one laughs at the one who falls, only laughs at the one who doesn't dare to stand up. The group of friends fell silent. After that day, the whole academy knew that Prince Min was not only intelligent, but also had the temperament of a defender of justice. And the one who had secretly cultivated that was Siu Sang. The story in the stone prison. One day, The king ordered all the students of the Tai Hawk Academy to try a night in the simulated stone prison, a place to detain criminals, to understand the fear and loneliness of the weak and powerless. Each person had to stay alone, without lights, without blankets, without noise. That night, Prince Min couldn't stand the darkness. He called out, "Sang, are you there?" From the next room, Siyu Sang's voice rang out. "I'm here. Are you scared?" "Yes. For the first time, I know what it feels like to be stripped of all power," Siyu Sang replied. "The common people live in prison like that every day. Prison of poverty, of oppression. But they have no one in the next room to answer them." That night, the prince stayed awake. And from then on, he never considered the throne an honor anymore, but a responsibility that a song in the middle of the night sometimes. After school, the two of them sneaked up to the roof of the royal palace, looking at the night sky. The prince had a very beautiful singing voice, and Siyu Sang knew how to play a bamboo flute. Once, he sang a folk song from his hometown. The moon rises to the top of the mountain, round and round. The boys go to the fields, the oxen plow. The prince was silent. He said, "If I were king, I would forbid the mandarins from taxing sweat, forbid the exploitation of every grain of rice that the people grow." Siyu Sang nodded, playing a flute as smooth as the sound of bamboo in the middle of the field that a friendship without profit many people whispered. The prince plays with the country boy to gain a reputation as being close to the people. That boy befriends the prince to hope for a high position. But both of them, neither of them cares about power. They only see one precious thing in each other. "Truth," Siyu Sang once said, "I don't want to be an official. I just want to help people learn, as I have learned." The prince replied, "Then tomorrow, when I become king, you will be the one to keep the books for me." Books are used to rule the country, not by sword, but by the hearts of the people. The imperial palace of Tanglong at night was sparkling with firelight. Oil lamps were lit along the seemingly endless corridors, shining on the cold stone walls. But behind that light were secrets, plots that were stirring to life like snakes crawling under leaves, because no one would accept a commoner child, no matter how smart, no matter how trusted by the king, sitting closer to the throne than them. The one standing in the dark, Grand Tutor Lu Jin, who had raised the previous prince, held the important position of national advisor, was a notoriously cold and ambitious man. He came from a prestigious family and was an ambitious man to make his son the son-in-law, and then go further. Lu Jin had long hated Siyu Sang, but he was not foolish enough to attack him directly. He chose to divide him from within. "If I make the prince suspect the boy, then he will be kicked out of the imperial palace." Receipt the trap. Rumors and forged documents. Lu Jin secretly ordered his confidant to forge a handwritten letter in which it was written that Siyu Sang had once been enticed by a group of rebels in the south to become an insider, and that Siyu Sang had not reported to the court. The forged letter was secretly dropped into Prince Ming's study, along with a small piece of paper. "Your friend is not as real as you think." Prince Ming and his doubts when he read the letter. The prince was stunned. Siyu Sang? Betrayal? How could that be? But then suspicious details gradually emerged. The times when Siyu Sang went somewhere alone, without saying anything. The mocking words of the people in the courtyard. "What do you know about his background?" The words of his father, King Lu, once said, "I trust his intelligence, but people's hearts are not easy to fathom." The prince's mind began to waver. For the first time, a thin crack appeared between the two friends. The second trap. The lie of the villain not stopping there. Lu Jin had a scholar in the academy, who owed him a favor, approached the prince, pretending to be someone who heard Siyu Sang whispering strange words. He once asked me, "If you want no one in the palace to suspect you, what should you do? Do you think that's innocent?" The prince was even more confused. The first time, the prince avoided Siyu Sang for many days. Siyu Sang went to class. The prince did not speak. When they walked, they did not walk together. At night, they did not talk together. He felt the change. And even though no one said anything, he understood. Someone was sowing poison into their friendship. The Siyu Sang took action, but did not fight back. Instead of coming to question him, Siyu Sang just kept silent. He wrote on a short note and sent it to the prince. If you doubt me, ask. If you don't trust me anymore, keep quiet. But if you still have feelings for me, let me explain that he who sows doubt in people's hearts is the one who kills trust. The confrontation and the truth is revealed. The prince, after many nights of torment, decided to secretly bring Siyu Sang to see his father, present the fake letter, and request an investigation. The king listened, not angry. He nodded. I also suspected, but I need you to see the truth with your own eyes. The king ordered the secret eunuchs to investigate, and just 3 days later, the whole scheme was exposed. The letter was fake. The person who spread the news was a subordinate of the Grand Preceptor Lu Jin, and the entire bribery system had been operating for the past 2 months. The quiet purge Lu Jin was not executed, but was stripped of all his positions and sent back to his hometown to be placed under house arrest. The traitorous scholars were expelled from the academy. The king did not enjoy killing, but his actions were like thunder in the night. Quick, neat, and decisive. Friendship tested by fire, the prince came before Siyu Sang and knelt down. It was I who suspected you, even without clear evidence. I let my heart waver. Siyu Sang was not angry. He only said, when people's hearts are covered by darkness, even light fades. But I am not angry, because you chose to find the light again. An unwritten contract from that day on. The two friends became closer than ever, but different from before. They were no longer children, but two people who understood what it meant to lose and regain. Trust, that Siyu Sang told the prince. The day you ascend the throne, I do not need any position. Just remember, trust is the greatest treasure in the world. That autumn, the Lu dynasty held a major event, the National Policy Discussion Congress, gathering all the mandarins, scholars, officials, and excellent students from all over the capital. This was an opportunity for the king to hear opinions on reforming the court, changing tax laws, opening new schools, and revising the penal code. That Siyu Sang, although not a mandarin, was appointed by the king to attend as a young observer. This, once again, angered the arrogant scholars in the court. New character. Minister Tran Quang Dao was the Minister of Rights, a man who appeared to be righteous, his mouth full of loyalty to the king and love for the country. But in his heart, he was a two-faced person, famous for greedy bribery from villagers when considering academic degrees, accepting gold to support the children of the rich to enter the academy, and secretly opposing all the king's reforms to maintain his own interests. When he saw Siyu Sang present at the Congress, he was furious. A young boy, who hasn't shaved his head yet, is already sitting and listening to the discussion of state affairs. Where is the honor of the court? But on the surface, Tran Quang Dao still smiled, calling him a talented page boy. The topic of the debate: reform the rice tax. The king proposed reduce taxes for farmers in remote and low-lying areas, where crop failures have been prolonged. At the same time, increase revenue from wealthy merchant camps. A proposal for the people. But immediately, Tran Quang Dao stood up and objected. Your Majesty, doing so will cause the treasury to be depleted, farmers will become dependent, and merchants will leave the country. The country will be lost, not because of the enemy, but because of our own hands. Everyone was in an uproar. The way he spoke, full of reason and sharpness, but Siyu Sang sat still, his eyes shining. He knew Tran Quang Dao was using flowery words to protect his own interests. The boy stood up, challenging the entire hall when the king asked, "Does anyone have any objections?" Siyu Sang stood up. Your Majesty, I am young. I do not dare to debate morality. But I would like to tell a story. All eyes turned to the boy. The story: the warehouse guard and the stealing rice bag. There was a warehouse of rice that the king assigned to a guard. Every day that person reported, there is enough rice, the people are at peace. But in fact, every night, he took a bushel and brought it home. The rice was running out. The people were hungry. But the king did not know. When someone suggested checking the warehouse, he said, "No need. Checking will take time. The people will be in chaos." So I asked, is that person a loyal minister or a traitor? The whole hall was silent. The king frowned. But Tran Quang Dao himself turned pale. Siyu Sang continued, "Your Majesty, if I have evidence that the person took the merchant's gold to keep the tax high for the poor, then who is that person?" The revelation before the court. Siyu Sang pulled out a piece of paper, a handwritten copy of a merchant from the Red River region, along with a fake order stamped by Tran Quang Dao, forcing the people of the northern region to pay an additional 5 bushels of rice per household, called educational fees. The whole palace was in an uproar. Tran Quang Dao tried to shout, "Forgery! Fake letter!" But Prince Min stood up and said loudly, "I myself had the seal verified. It is indeed the private seal of Minister Tran." The king punishes. King Lu stood up and said in a harsh voice, "Whoever uses education to deceive the people, uses rituals to plunder, is a traitor." The order was issued. Remove Tran Quang Dao from his position as Minister of State, confiscate assets due to bribery, and announce the whole incident to the people as a deterrent. The end of a trickster. When being led away, Tran Quang Dao turned to look at Siyu Sang, his eyes full of hatred. "Who are you to dare to betray me?" Siyu Sang only replied, "I am someone who has lived among dry and cracked fields and understand the value of every grain of rice." People's hearts, the real reward after that incident. People throughout Tang Long loudly praised the boy who betrayed the high-ranking official, a man without a position who protected the people. The king held a small party, but Siyu Sang refused to accept the reward. "I did it not to be rewarded, but because if I remained silent, my mother would be the first to pay the education tax." That spring, flowers bloomed early all over Tang Long. The sky was clear. The gentle sunlight spread over the ancient tiled roofs. Colorful flags were hung all over the streets. The sound of festival drums was bustling from early morning to late afternoon. Because today was the day of the royal examination, the biggest examination in the country, where the first, second, and third laureates were selected for the royal court. This year, no one was surprised by the name that would be announced first. Everyone knew. The boy Siyu Sang from back then, now the young Siyu Sang, taking the exam with a special status. The exam shook the entire royal court. The exam question that year was a single question: how to maintain a country when everything is changing. While other candidates cited Confucianism, quoted ancient books, and cited ancient kings, Siyu Sang wrote nearly 50 pages in one go, opening with the sentence, "To maintain a country when everything changes, we must teach people how to live with change, not force them to hold on to the past." He concluded, "Don't be afraid of change. Just be afraid that the leader doesn't have the intelligence and heart to lead the way in change." The essay caused a stir. Many examiners nodded right from the first page. King Lu, upon reading it, exclaimed, "I have someone to succeed me." Announcing the name of the first prize winner on the day the results were announced, the dragon courtyard was packed with people. People from everywhere flocked to the place, and the villagers of Kusang even traveled for 3 days just to see Siyu Sang's name announced in front of the world. The drums beat 3 times. The ceremonial officer announced loudly, "The first prize winner of the imperial examination in the 17th year of Dian is Sang, courtesy name Min Triad, from Kusang village." The applause was thunderous. The people cheered, many shed tears. The old woman with a hunched back, Mother Net, stood in the corner of the row, trembling, her eyes filled with tears. The ceremony of conferring the title of Trang, like no other the next day. Siyu Sang was invited to the main hall, where King Lu and the court officials would confer the title and hand over the golden pen, the symbol of the first prize winner. But when he arrived, in front of many waiting eyes, Siyu Sang suddenly knelt down and said, "Your Majesty, I refuse the title." The whole court was in an uproar. Prince Min was surprised, and King Lu was silent for a few seconds, then asked, "Why do you refuse, when this is the glory that the whole country dreams of?" The dialogue between the king and his student Siyu Sang said, "Your Majesty, I dare not be ungrateful. But if I become a mandarin, I will have to live in the palace, read memorials, write laws, and debate with the mandarins. But I want to return to the village, open a school, and teach the barefoot children." because there is a greater lack of literate people than there is a lack of mandarins. A moment of silence fell over the Jade Palace. The king looked at him for a long time. He nodded. I have never seen anyone refuse power for such a noble reason. Then, if you do not become a mandarin for the court, then become a mandarin for the people. Unprecedented special decree that very day, the king issued a decree. Grant the person named Sang, courtesy named Min Triad, the title of Dan Trang that he does not receive a salary, does not hold a position, but has the right to establish a school, open his own bookstore, is exempt from land tax, and is called teacher of 100 villages. The order was issued, and the whole country was bustling like a festival that a small promise between two friends before leaving the palace. Prince Min hugged Siyu Sang. When I become king, will you still be by my side? Siyu Sang smiled. If one day you can no longer hear the voice of the people, I will come knocking on the palace door. And if you still remember today, then there is no need for me to be near. They hugged each other like two brothers, not a king and a minister, but two people who understood why they lived. One early autumn morning, when the dew was still on the grass, the road leading to Kusang village suddenly bustled with footsteps. There were no drums, no flags, no palanquins, but the villagers were already standing on both sides of the road, the elderly bowing and the children running after them, shouting loudly. Mr. Sang is back. The first prize winner of our village has returned. No, it's Dan Trang, the teacher of the people. Leading the way was a tall young man in a simple brown shirt, a cloth bag on his shoulder, walking leisurely. That was Siyu Sang, no longer the boy of yesteryear, but the one who brought the light of knowledge back to the fields. Reunion with Mother Net in front of the house. Mother Net, her hair as white as frost, was trembling, holding the hem of her shirt, waiting. She did not cry, just silently watched her son approach. Siyu Sang hugged his mother tightly and whispered, I'm back, Mom. Not to be an official, but to be a teacher of letters. Mother Net held her son close to her, tears streaming silently. I don't need you to be an official. I just need you to live honestly, like I taught you. The school by the bamboo grove just 1 week later, Siyu Sang started building the first school in Kusang village. The school was simple, with a thatched roof, tables and chairs made from forest wood, and writing boards made of flat wooden boards carefully rubbed with charcoal. But every day, dozens of children, who used to have to herd buffaloes, glean rice, and collect firewood, now eagerly came to study. He taught not only letters, but also how to do math with pebbles, how to write poems from lullabies, how to look at the sky to predict the weather, how to listen to the rooster crowing to divide the hours. Study is not to become an official, but to know who you are, to know how you should live. A short story and a big lesson once. A child named Siyu Theo skipped school to go fishing. When asked, he trembled and said, I catch fish because my family is hungry. Siyu Sang did not scold. The next day, he took the whole class to the river, taught how to make a bamboo fish trap, and said, learning also requires knowing how to live. But living without learning, you will not know how to be a human being. From then on, Siyu Sang's class was never empty of students. The Dan Trang traveled throughout the region soon. The surrounding villages heard the news. They invited Siyu Sang to teach for a month, 2 months. He traveled everywhere, studying in the temple, teaching in the communal house yard, teaching illiterate people how to write their names. The ancient scholars called him Dan Trang. The villagers called him more simply, Teacher Sang. Once back to the capital many years later, when Prince Min ascended the throne, with the title Min Duk, he sent someone to invite Siyu Sang to the capital to take up the position of Prime Minister. But Siyu Sang only sent a short letter. I do not refuse the throne. I only refuse a throne that I do not need to sit on. That if your majesty still listens to the people, I will still firmly stay in the countryside. That a child who knows how to read and write will save his whole life. That a mandarin who does not know the people's letters, what is the point of being a mandarin? The king read the letter and shed tears. He ordered the letter to be engraved on a stone stele, placed in front of the Imperial Academy, to be remembered forever. Finally, there is a legend. When Siyu Sang was old, his hair as white as clouds, People said that he still taught every morning, still cooked rice to share with poor students. And every year, on the opening pin ceremony, he wrote a big word on the board, saying, not just his name. It was not just his name, but it is the light of knowledge, of humanity, of kindness.